So blind. You so do not understand. You weren't there at the beginning. You don't know how good it was, how important. This is it for you, this jumped up firework display of a toy advert.
When it comes to British TV shows, I usually don't get it. My first experience with British TV was my dad watching Benny Hill late at night on HBO. It was not only my first experience with British humor, but also my first experience with the nude female body. So in a way I could see why my dad watched it, but I couldn't figure out what he was laughing at. A few years later I would watch my brother laugh, and this time there was no new women, but there were a lot of British-speaking men. When my brother would roll with laughter watching the Mighty Pythons, again I was lost. I didn't get it. Why was a dead parrot so funny?
I've got a nice fresh cuttlefish for you if you wake up, Mr. Polypallot!
Wealth is the only reality, and the only way to obtain wealth is to take it away from somebody else. Wake up, Blake.
Not until power is back with the honest man.
Have you ever met an honest man?
In the late 80s, thanks to PBS, I was able to find some enjoyment with British television, thanks to the great writing of the science fiction classic Blake 7. Was I at a turning point to British humor? Was I coming of age? Taking advice from who I thought was a friend, I checked out Doctor Who and was left baffled, wondering why he and his friends felt it was the best science fiction television show ever made. Over the years, I could never get into any British television show. Most of what I did try was British comedy, and it was humor that I didn't hate, I just didn't get. I did enjoy Mr. Bean for about 3 minutes. Even when Billy Connolly took over as teacher on Head of the Class, I turned off. As I got older, I kept trying. As a fan of The Office, at least the first few years, I was told over and over again that the British Office was much better and so much funnier. So I checked it out, and I could not understand one word they were saying.
Told him once that I don't like jelly. Don't trust the way it moves.
Yeah, you showed him a weakness. He pounced. You should know about that.
What? What are you saying? I can't understand any of this. Some reason I never had an issue understanding anyone on Blake 7, but when it came to The Office, I didn't know what anyone was saying 90% of the time, so I turned it off. Not too long after that, I was told by a friend that I would love Spaced, a British television show comedy. I dismissed it. I had tried all my life to get into British humor, and I never could, so I gave up. Over the next few years, I kept hearing people talk about this show, Spaced, and what I did hear about it, I liked a lot. In 2004, while attending Dragon Con, my friend and I was able to get an early U.S. screening of a new zombie movie called Shaun of the Dead. I never was into horror movies, and really not into zombie movies. But it was free and my friend was excited, so I went along. As the movie started, I was ready to hate it. But within the first 10 to 15 minutes, I found myself not only laughing, not only understanding what everyone was saying, but something happened that I didn't expect. I found myself connecting with the two British leads and wrapped up in the movie's simple story. By the end, I loved it. I wanted more. That's what my friend told me. Not only did it star the same two guys from Space, but it was also written by one of them, and the director of Shaun of the Dead was also the director of Space. So if I loved Shaun of the Dead, I should love Space. And more importantly, if I could understand what everyone said in Shaun of the Dead, then I should understand everyone on Space. So that was it. I was going to try. And being that it was only 2 seasons with a total of 14 episodes, even if I didn't like it, I could easily give it a fair watch. The show stars Simon Pegg and Jessica Stevenson as Tom and Daisy, two young 20-something-year-olds who hardly knew each other, but decided to pose as a young couple in love in order to rent a cheap flat, which I soon learned was a British term for apartment. The premise didn't seem that exciting, but what I soon found out was the premise of the show really didn't matter. It was about the characters, not only Tim and Daisy, but their wacky friends.
Little Ewoks. An entire empire brought to its knees by small, furry creatures.
Mike, I really am not in the mood.
Oh, shit!
Tim was the Generation X type. He was in love with movies, comics, and probably even more, in love with his PlayStation. He longed to be a comic book artist. And the best thing about Tim, he was a fan of the original Star Wars trilogy. This guy I could really relate to.
The Phantom Menace was 18 months ago, Tim.
I know, Bilbo. Okay, it still hurts. You know, that kid wanted a Jar Jar doll.
Kids like Jar Jar.
Why?
What about the Ewoks? Hey? They were rubbish. You don't complain about them.
Yeah, but Jar Jar Binks makes the Ewoks look like fucking Shaft.
Daisy was a wannabe writer who would often drag her feet about writing assignments. Out of the two, she was the happy-go-lucky, the one that always looked on the bright side. Something about her was very likable, almost from the start of the show. Mike was played by Nick Frost, who also starred with Simon Pegg in Shaun of the Dead. He is obsessed with the military and best friends with Tim. He is often used as a dumb sidekick type character, but often is shown to be very smart, at least in his field of expertise. And then there's Brian, who stays in the same the flat building, as Tim and Daisy. He's a starving artist, shy and awkward. What is mostly due to the death of his childhood pet dog, Pom Pom. His painting at times is driven out of his anger, pain, fear, and aggression. His art is his passion. Marcia, the alcoholic landlord of the flat, hardly ever seen without her cigarette and a glass of wine. She has a teenage daughter that she's always at odds with, but we never fully see the daughter, at times only fleeing her flat after an argument with her mother. And as for Marcia, I really can't understand anything this lady says throughout the show.
Save the bottle of champers for the big night. I'm sure I can resist its charms till then.
But I still love her character. Her British accent that I have a hard time understanding, for some reason adds to her charm. There's a few other characters in the series, such as Daisy's best friend Kate, but those are the core four that make up the show.
Derek, Babylon 5's a big pile of shit.
Get out!
Yay!
It's really hard to say this show is about this show is about that, and make it sound like a great show. The premise of the show is typical, but it's the writing and the character that make this show so funny and different. Each episode mostly deals with the surreal adventures of Tim and Daisy as they deal with life as they enter adulthood, both hardly ever really being able to grow up, at least compared to others their age. If you're a fan of what they now call geek culture, a term I'm not that crazy about, you will love this show and enjoy the many pop culture references dealing with science fiction movies, horror films, comics, video games, and more. I knew I was hooked on the show when early in the show's run, Tim, while working at a comic book store, kicked a kid out of the store for wanting to buy a Jar Jar Binks action figure.
So blind! You so do not understand! You weren't there at the beginning. You don't know how good it was, how important. This is it for you, this jumped up firework display of a toy advert. People like you make me sick. What's wrong with you? Now, I don't care if you've saved up all your 50p's, okay? Take your pocket money and get out!
Most of the time I see Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright credited for creating the show, but Jessica Stevens, who plays Daisy, co-wrote the episodes with Simon and is just as much part of the creating force of the show as Pegg and Wright. If you're a fan of Edgar Wright, or when he and Simon Pegg work together, I'm sure you will love this show. And being it's only 14 episodes made up of 2 seasons, it's a quite easy and fast watch. I do wish the show got a few more seasons, but ending it early is maybe why I can go back to this show so often and still love it. As many shows, at least the ones in the US, they drag out season after season, going on way too long, with each season being weaker than the last. As they say, sometimes it's best to go out on top, leaving fans wanting more, than to drag it out so long that the fans turn away from it. The show is streaming on Hulu, and if you've never seen it, please give it a watch, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Let's just hope we don't see a US version of Space, as I don't feel the US could do this show right, at least not on a major network. Space is a show from its time. It was made in 1999 for 1999, and being that it takes place in London, that also works as part of the show. I can't really see a US version of this show working, but who knows, I could be wrong.
Shazam. It is a word. It is a word. I've got a pile of comics this big. Captain Marvel says it.
It's a nonsense invented word. You're only doing that so you can use Z. Take it off.
I swear to God.
It's not a word.
So please let me know in the comments below what you think about this show, Space. And if you've never seen it, please check it out. Well, I want to thank you for watching. As always, please subscribe to the channel, thumb up so I know you like my content, and I'll be back again very soon.
Hey, Junkman channel popping though.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.